Let us pray. O God, we come together in your name in this Parliament to debate our nation's affairs and pass laws for the betterment and welfare of all Fijians. Guide us in our deliberations and grant us the wisdom to do what is just and fair. We ask you to bless our beloved nation and grant every Fijian peace, prosperity, and equal opportunity. Help us to serve our citizens with honesty, integrity, and without fear or favor, to keep the trust of those who have sent us here. We seek your divine guidance to continue to build a better nation for all Fijians. In your name, Amen. Honorable members, please be seated. Secretary General.
Confirmation of minutes.
I now call on the Leader of the Government in Parliament, the Honourable Inia Seruiratu, to move his motion. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I move that the minutes of the sitting of Parliament held on Wednesday, 29th July 2020, as previously circulated, be taken as read and be confirmed.
Is there a seconder?
Honourable Speaker, I beg to second the motion.
Honourable members, the Parliament will now vote on the motion. The question is that the minutes of the sitting of Parliament held on Wednesday, 29th July 2020, as previously circulated, be taken as read and be confirmed. Does any member oppose the motion? As no member opposes, the motion is agreed to unanimously. Secretary General.
Communications from the Chair.
I welcome all honourable members to today's sitting of Parliament. I also welcome all those watching the live broadcast and the live streaming of today's proceedings. Thank you for taking an interest in the workings of your Parliament. Honourable members, I have received a request from the Standing Committee on Foreign Affairs and Defence, requesting for an extension of time to complete deliberations on the 3 treaties that were referred to the Standing Committee. For the information of all honourable members, the Standing Committee needs further clarification on some of the provincial findings. On a similar note, I have noted the need by the Standing Committee on Justice, Law and Human Rights to undertake further consultations on the Cybercrime Bill 2020. Therefore, in that regard, the Standing Committee on Foreign Affairs and Defence and the Standing Committee on Justice, Law and Human Rights will table their reports at a later sitting of Parliament. For the information of honourable members, the Secretariat has received 1. A written response from the Office of the Prime Minister to the consolidated report on the review of the Ministry of Sugars Industries 2012 to 2016 annual report. This will be conveyed to the Standing Committee on Economic Affairs. 2. Response to written question 64 of 2020 by the Honourable Minister Osea Naingamu. This has been conveyed to the Honourable Chese Saukuru. And 3. Response to written question 90 of 2020 by the Honourable Pramila Kumar. This has been conveyed to the Honourable Pio Tikonduandua. Thank you, Honourable Members, and we will now move on to the next item on the order paper. Secretary General.
Consideration of bills.
Honourable members, we will deal with this item after we conclude the Committee of Supplies. Secretary General.
Resumption of Committee of Supply on a bill for an act to appropriate a sum of $3,211,019,121 for the ordinary services of government for the year ending 31 July 2021, Bill number 13 of 2020.
Honourable members, the Parliament will now resolve into the Committee of Supply to resume the debates on the heads in the budget estimates. Secretary General.
Head number 23, Ministry of Housing and Community Development.
Floor.
Honourable Chair,
Program 1, Activity 1. Honourable Linda Tambuya.
thank you, Honourable Chair. The clarification sought from the Minister is a general one under that activity and program, seeing that though the entire ministry is almost under R, 80%, 86% of the ministry, I think it's the highest percentage of allocation of the budget under R is for housing. But Honourable Speaker, I seek clarification with the emoluments and the amounts that are in this head or in this particular Program 1, Activity 1, has shown that while those remain, that the activities following later have been reduced. So I question the delivery from the Ministry for Housing in terms of service delivery to the people. Honourable Speaker, the clarification I seek from the Minister in terms of their annual reports, which hasn't been filed, to show the performance of the ministry since 2015 under this particular program 1, activity 1. And this has not been accounted for to the people or here in Parliament. And I reiterate my concern again of the non-submission of annual reports, including independent bodies and commissions that are commissioned by the Housing Ministry, to do the work where taxpayers' funds are going to them. They, Honourable Speaker, there needs to be a look at the checks and balances for these bodies and commissions and agencies who receive taxpayer funds, and they make recommendations to government regarding their funding and operations. But this is not usually, allocated or seen here in a Committee of Supply. So I just want a clarification for Honourable Minister before I move my motion, which is now before you, about the annual reports and about the performance of the ministry, given that one, most of your budget now is under R, and two, that you have failed to give annual reports since 2015 to see the performance of your staff and your housing under this head. Thank you.
Honourable member, just stick to the program and the activity as they are. As order. When the Speaker is addressing the House, everybody listens, whether this side of the House or this side. Just stick to the program and the activity. We will let you move your motion, and you can bring the points that you raised in when you move your motion. But don't cut across one activity and one program. We'll continue.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I will then wait for my motion, which is in the next activity. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, clarification regarding Sec 7, Mr. Chair. Sec 7, Program 1, Activity 1, Sec 7. There's a reduction in the allocation from 280,000 to 80,000. I see that 80,000 is a National Housing Policy Implementation Plan of 80,000. Can we get an assurance from the Minister or clarification in terms of this reduction in allocation from last year? Which divisions have had the offices established under this allocation from last year, and the intentions of this National Housing Implementation Plan, whether it be done throughout the divisions or just from one central division?
You have the floor, Minister.
Mr. Chair, sir, regarding national policy, national housing policy, it's national. So it means throughout Fiji, we need to do consultation to understand the housing stock, and also to verify through our research how many houses we need to build, say, every year to meet the housing needs of this country. So in terms of a divisional office, what we have done, we have been strategizing with Public Rental Board, Housing Authority, and Ministry of Housing, all three institutions, where the staff can sit in one building. So when when public, they visit this particular office, they can access information related to all three institutions. That will reduce the cost, as well as the services will become much more efficient. And we have already done that with Ministry of Housing, now relocated at Gowrie Street, where Housing Authority staff also sits in Ministry of Housing.
Thank you. Honourable Tigundondua, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, just an issue for clarification from the Minister. Under Sec 5, there is an allocation for transportation of building materials, which is an allocation that's being increased to 130K. Could we just get some clarification for that? Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Minister, you have the floor.
Mr. Chair, sir, under rural housing, we've got two programs. Scheme 1 is where people living in rural and maritime areas, they have the money, only thing they need is for the ministry to source material at government tender prices, and then they do the shipment of these materials. So we have seen there is a request from the community, and for that reason, we have increased the amount, the allocation amount.
Thank you. Honorable Ratunaing Gamalang Balabu, you have the floor.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I seek some clarification as well regarding Sec 7, sir, on the National Housing Policy Implementation Plan. The clarification sought is regarding this national policy, and is the Housing Authority still under public enterprises as well? Why I'm raising this is that because the housing, public enterprises and as well as the Housing Authority tends to conflict in each other. And will this policy be still part of that, or is it now Housing Authority alone?
Thank you. Honorable Minister, you have the floor.
Mr. Chair, sir, Housing Authority is a statutory organization. It is appointed by the Minister of Economy because there is a lot of, money is involved as well as the government guarantees involved. But when it comes to the implementation of the work of Housing Authority, it falls under Ministry of Housing. So I deal with the work-related matters.
Thank you. Honorable Ratunaing Gamalang Balabu.
Yes, sir. I only sought clarification on if the Housing Authority still comes under public enterprises or it's no longer.
It is still under public enterprise.
Program 2, Activity 1.
Yes.
Honorable Kurundrani, you have the floor.
Mr. Chairman, just need a clarification from the Minister on the logic. This is Program 2, Activity 1, Seg 10. Clarification from the Minister on the logic of trying to revitalize the informal settlement when in Seg 8, they formalize of informal settlement. So what's the logic in trying to revitalize this informal settlement and environment?
Honorable Minister.
Revitalizing the informal settlement, actually we were providing certain facilities in informal settlement, say for example the street lights, the footpath, and so forth, or culverts for that matter, if they urgently needed those services and we knew that development of that particular site will take longer. So that's what it meant. But we will discontinue that particular vote moving forward because that can be now included in the upgrading of informal settlement.
Thank you. Honorable Gargara Tambua, you have the floor.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. Just a question for the Honourable Minister on Programme 2, Activity 1, Seg 10, with the housing assistance for persons living with disabilities, $100,000, which, as we all know, used to be $500,000 going towards Habitat for Humanity. I just wanted to get assurance from the Minister that, one, why the drop, and two, would whoever's doing the modifications for the homes, would they be following the same criteria that Habitat for Humanity built? Because, as you know, it's not just a ramp for somebody that's wheelchair bound, it's a lot more than that. So my question is, that drop by 400,000. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, sir.
Honorable Minister, you have the floor.
Mr. Chair, sir, before we submit our budget to Ministry of Economy, there is a consultation with each and every agency that we work with. And we had a discussion with UN Habitat as well. Previously, UN Habitat was the institution that was delivering this service. But do note, when institutions like these are involved, there is an administration cost as well. So to reduce the administration cost and to provide value for money, this particular program is now under Ministry of Housing, where we will be using our own carpenters to provide this service. And this is the rural housing carpenters that we have, as well as PRB carpenters. So in this way, we'll be able to deliver more with less. And in terms of standard, obviously, you can't, I mean, as a Ministry of Housing, we cannot just go around doing the retrofit without following the standard. We have to set the standard for other institutions, so obviously we will be following the standard, and we are following the standard.
Thank you. Honorable Justice Okuru, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a clarification and confirmation from the Honorable Minister with regard to formalization of informal settlements. Is Lovu settlement included in this formalization of informal settlements? We've received complaints from the settlers in the Lovu settlements that nothing has been done on the development for their informal settlement. That's Sec 10, Lovu Seaside.
Oh, yes. Lovu Seaside is, we have the development lease for Lovu Seaside. Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Yes. So we have the development lease for Lovu Seaside, and as I mentioned previously, we have development lease for 44 different informal sites, and this year we acquired another 5 development lease. Now, obviously what we do is we try and finish off some of the programs that started earlier on, like for example, Lendru Sasa, Duvu, and Waindamundamu. The other projects, the new projects, where the paperwork, EIA, etc. has been done, we can roll it out. And for Lovu Seaside, again, we had consultation. Some preparatory work has started.
Thank you.
Honorable Bulnoda, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Just a clarification on Sec 10. On Kuroipita Model Town, 500,000. Also in aid in kind, Model Town Charitable Trust, Kuroipita Phase 4, funding of 190,736. What's the purpose and the progress from various stages to now? Thank you.
Honorable Minister, you have the floor.
Mr. Chair, sir, only thing I heard was Kuroipita. So is that what your question is?
Yes.
Is it on Kuroipita? Okay. Again, as I mentioned earlier on, when 2 million is allocated initially for any project, obviously that money is used and the needs of the organization decreases. So for Kuroipita, they requested for 2 million. We have already given them 1 million, and that $1 million was used for completion of the stage 3 housing, which was for 23 households. That project is completed. There was a delay in the completion of stage 4 because they could not acquire the land on time. So we are only giving them $500,000 because that's what they have requested. And with this money, they will be acquiring the land and they will be doing all the preparatory work. For example, the scheme plan, the engineering plan, the civil work that they need to do on the site.
I'm just not quite clear on the purpose of the model town.
Purpose?
Purpose, yeah.
It's a social housing project. This is for vulnerable people in our community, and it is run by Peter Drysdale. That's why it's called Kuroipita. And this is generally for people who are single mothers, and it's for, does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. He knows very well about Kuroipita. Honorable Tishababu, you have the floor.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. My apologies. On SEG 10, on the disability housing for, is Fiji Council Social Services, Lami branch had been assisting some widows there. One was a blind widow on the housing, assisted with partnership with Basic Homes, the private sector. Is that included in this as one of the organizations assisted? And also, is there plans to work with the private sector in that regard? Thank you.
Specifically, your first part of the question, the answer is no. Second part of the question, yes. We work with each and every different stakeholder group. NGOs like Korepita. We work with private sector like IFC, the development partners, etc. And also you may have heard in the current budget, there was this announcement about the subdivision of lots, where we're encouraging private sector to come on board. And even in last year's budget, the announcement was that if anyone builds multiple story building and they set aside certain percentage for strata titles, they also get some form of subsidy and incentives. So yes, we do work with private sector.
Thank you. Honorable Bulitavu.
Yeah, Honorable Chair, good morning. Honorable Minister, on SEG 10, Honorable Chair, on the housing assistance for persons living with disability, we note that there is $100,000, and whether this will only assist those improving their current dwellings, or people with disability building new homes, or what's the quotation that they need to raise if they are going to build a new house? What's the maximum? Because a lean-to could cost about $18,000, and how many applicants you are looking into?
This is for assistance for persons living with disability. Am I right? Yeah. This is only for retrofits. For example, the wheelchair that is, if they want to move around the wheelchair, what are the ramps that needs to be put in, or the bathroom features that needs to be put in place. So it's only the improvement, retrofitting.
Thank you. Honorable Biman Prasad.
Minister, quick question. There's an allocation of 1.6 million for Public Rental Board, but I understand you recently announced or said that PRB will be merged into housing. Can you give us some more information? Is it been done, or requires a legislative change before it's done? And what will be the implications for Public Rental Board subsidy?
Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sir, I would like to start with the last question first. What is the implication? I think it's the best thing that we can ever do. At the moment, we've got Housing Authority of Fiji and Public Rental Board, and if you go back to 1980s, these two institutions were one. It was after the corruption in Housing Authority, that's when Public Rental Board was separated. Now, if you analyze the cost, if we continue to keep Public Rental Board separately, it chews a lot of money because, again, they're occupying prime properties around the country for nothing, because that property can be then used for rental purposes. And Public Rental Board, once it goes into Housing Authority, then the overhead cost of operation will come down. So that's one. Secondly, legislative changes. Yes, this is where we are working on the National Housing Plan, where we will be looking at the various legislation that requires changes, and also the rights and responsibilities of those institutions that are providing the services, and those individuals who are receiving the services, what are their responsibility. So there's going to be an overall change that we want to bring about in the housing sector. For Public Rental Board, we are, through our cabinet decision, we are making some minor changes. For example, we are moving the Public Rental Board staff into Housing Authority building, and we are undertaking a job evaluation, and also we're looking at the staffing needs. Let me just share this. I had done the analysis on Housing Authority. Housing Authority, the only job is to do the subdivision of land. Once the subdivision of land is done, then they sell that land. This is what they're doing currently. Again, who does the subdivision of land? Not the Housing Authority staff. It is outsourced. And yet, when you analyze the number of staff at Housing Authority, it's 220. What are they doing? It's a cost to the taxpayers. And we need to tidy up all this with such institutions who are here to look after the needs of our people.
Thank you. Honorable Asiri Randondo, you have the floor.
Thank you. Of informal settlements. I know the question has been answered regarding law, but the amount is $2 million. And the $2 million seems to have not moved or utilized from the last year.
Not?
Can we just get a listing of the informal settlements that will be attended to during this process, especially informal settlements along the Suvarnasari corridor who have been under this program or maybe in the pipeline. So just wanted to know whether Muslim League, Watuanga, and all those other settlements along the Suvarnasari corridor are included in this.
Okay, for the formalization of informal settlement, we have utilized the $2 million that was allocated in 2019-2020 budget. For the 2020-2021 budget, we will be working on new projects that we announced in the last budget. These projects were in the preparatory phase, and the projects were Tavela, Torre, Sakoda, Wakanisila. So these projects will be now put into the construction phase. Right? Again, there's few things still left, like for example, EIA, etc., simply because of the COVID lockdown. This work was not completed. So we'll complete all this work and we'll put it into the construction phase. We know that when we start off with a upgrading of an informal settlement, it's not like a green field where you walk in and you can complete the work within, say, 36 months or 12 months. It doesn't work that way because there are real people living in that settlement. And sometimes there's so much of dispute that it takes much longer time to complete. Now, coming back to your question of exactly whether we're doing a upgrading in Watuanga and Nasinu area, for Watuanga, the number of informal settlement that's been taken care of by the, I would say, private individuals like Bindi brothers, they have come on board to relocate some of this settlement into 8 miles. So there are some individuals in our community who are coming on board to assist, but of course we cannot just do upgrading of all 250 informal settlements at once.
Thank you. Honorable Tigadondo.
Thank you, Chair. Under Sec 10, I would just like to ask the Minister a clarification on the Langi housing. I don't see any allocation on that, so what is the progress on Langi? I know there's been some legal issues over it, and is there still a relationship there with government in terms of the rest of the the informal community there?
Thank you. Honorable Minister.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, sir, Langi House is not Ministry of Housing's project. That's why it's not here. Langi Housing comes under PCN. So that's why it's not shown here.
Thank you. Honorable Linda Tambua, you have the floor for your motion.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I move a motion for an increase in under Program 2, Activity 1, Seg 10, first home purchase $50,000 and below, an increase to $2 million to $5 million. Thank you.
there a seconder?
Second.
Honorable Tambua, you have the floor.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. As I had mentioned and alluded to earlier, the Honorable Minister had mentioned, I think the other day in a speech, that 543 applicants had benefited from, from the first home purchase allocations in the last year, but I think they ran out of money before the year's end. Ran out of that funding. She had mentioned that too in the news. That she didn't give the breakdown as to how many of those were recipients that are $50,000 and below, Honorable Speaker. The issue that is faced by those that are receiving, entitled to this money, is that most of these live in the informal and squatter settlements. And so it ties into the formalization of informal and squatter settlements. It concerns me that they are unable to access funding or borrow because they have not received a formalization of their leases. So the question is, how many of these are receiving, how many people under 50,000 and below are receiving this assistance? And where's the housing? Where's the housing that they can, all the subdivisions that they can build in? Because according to the Housing Authority, who the Minister has mentioned, build subdivisions and sell, they have had to hand over, after spending millions of dollars, hand over those subdivisions to now what the Attorney General has mentioned, a partnership with IFC, even though they've spent millions of dollars of revenue. I'll give you an example of the subdivisions that was under them now, may possibly be handed over to IFC. There's the subdivision in Nepani, which members of the public have been listed for and are still unable to access assistance for that. So there's holdups in the entire system. What I'm saying is they're falling through the cracks, those that are 50,000 and under, because there aren't subdivisions or homes that they can purchase. That hasn't been provided by the government. So an increase in the allocation for this will hopefully see the government move faster on these subdivisions, whether they partner with IFC or Housing Authority or Habitat, to have these homes be realized. And also for the, the formalization of these settlements when they're still waiting on their leases for. So the Attorney General, it's a motion. The Attorney General has mentioned about partnering with IFC, but want to know the location of these projects, the sizes of these projects, and what will an individual pay for this? Are we targeting these under $50,000 consumers? Because they're not accessing these funds when most of them live in informal settlements and squatter settlements. They don't have title. So how can they borrow and how can they access these funds? By increasing these funds, this allocation would see hopefully the government will move quicker to build these homes for them. That's why the motion is before the House to increase this amount, which is particularly for our vulnerable and our needy who earn below $50,000. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Honorable Leader of the Opposition, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was going to speak on one of the standard expenditure groups, but I'll now speak on the motion. I support the motion, and I'm just wondering what has happened in Housing Authority. Well, what happened in our relations with New Zealand? Is it coming to an end? There's a lot that has been done, a lot that can still be done by Housing Authority, and I am very appreciative of their efforts in the past. My father and I borrowed to build. That was one of the kinds of loans they gave out at that time. And we had to do it in the first year of my service in the Army, before I got promoted or got commissioned, and we would have gone over the salary limit or threshold for housing authority loans. I think I believe we should increase the allocation, but what has happened to the New Zealand aid in kind? Have we declared war on New Zealand, or why is it coming to an end? I support the motion, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Honourable Attorney General, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just a couple of points I just wanted to clarify. One was in respect of the honourable member keeps on going about R. I want to reiterate, and she said that 50% of housing or more than that is under R. If you look at Program 1, Activity 1, the entire Program 1, Activity 1 is not under R because it's your normal operations. If you look at Program 2, Activity 1, the reason why it's under R is when you actually have contracts. So there are contractual obligations. So if somebody's been given a project to build, and they have to build it in stages, then the various documentation, the engineer's certificate needs to be signed, all of that needs to be done. So it goes through a particular documentary process. When it's under R, the desk officer at the Ministry of Economy needs to check off on it. And it does not even come to the minister if the R amount is $1 million or less. I don't even see it. So this is why people are coming from a personalized perspective. The PS for economy signs off on it. So for example, when, for example, there's a public rental board subsidy is being given, and there's a contract, like Tourism Fiji, there's a contract, MOU, quarterly. Every quarter they give them their money. So you need to have the acquittals. They check off on it, then they release the funds. It's a check-off system. You go on about accountability and making sure the money's been disbursed properly. This is the best form of accountability. We nip it at the butt, not after the fact. That's the issue why it's under R. So if you look at all of Sec 10, these are projects specifically that requires documentary evidence. That's why. So, please, you really need to understand this. I don't know whether you have an understanding of this or not. Honourable Lalam Balavu raised the issue about housing authority. The operations, of course, done by Ministry of Housing, policy, etc. We come from the governance perspective. Board members, accountability, those types of things is where it comes under public enterprise. In respect of the IFC issue, Mr. Chair, sir, the IFC matter is where the government is working with IFC. They've identified about 6 sites throughout Fiji, predominantly in Viti Levu, where these sites, the land stock being held by housing authority has not been utilized. So the idea is to bring the private sector to get subdivisions done quickly, but also to build homes. Now, as we've said previously, in so many instances, the model in Fiji for housing, in particular for what used to be called low-cost housing, now we call affordable housing, is we do not condemn certain areas to be forever low-cost housing areas. People, for example, who bought an apartment, had an apartment in Nambua, have not progressed socially. The value of their property has not increased. People in Rewanga, some of them, the value of their property is not increased. So what we want to do is have a type of housing and get people to start owning homes at an early age. Just because you're 24, 25 years old, you're working as a civil servant, does not mean you wait for the next 15 years to buy your own home. So we want to have strata titling, what we call duplex housing also. So the cost of that is much lower. If you have a 3-story building with 1, 2, 3 different apartments or flats or different number of bedrooms, the cost structure will be different. You could have on one floor somebody who's maybe working as a cleaner. The next door neighbor could be somebody who's working as a bank manager, who's paying a bit more. The next one could be somebody who's working, somewhere else, in Suva City Council or whatever. So when you have people of different economic stratas living in the same building, the value of the property will always increase. But if you have all low-cost housing, the value of that area won't increase. So if I bought a home and I've started off as a junior civil servant and I've got a $80,000 flat, when I've got married now, I've got my wife and I both earn, we now want to buy a 2-bedroom flat, I should be able to sell my first apartment at a price higher than what I bought it for. That's how I get social mobility in society. So then I buy a bigger place. Maybe I'll do well, get a promotion. I might buy a house on its own with a land on it. But we need to increase the rate of home ownership. That's critically important. That's what IFC is driving towards, and we need to build these buildings really quickly, but at affordable pricing. The other thing is, please understand, the technology and the methodology of construction in Fiji is still very archaic compared to many other countries. You know, people overseas actually use new technology, greener technology. They build things much faster. That's what we're also trying to do too. This is why it's critically important to get partners like IFC and other overseas construction companies cooperating with ours to be able to get that level of stockpile of homes. Now, the other point, of course, is that in respect of, I wanted to highlight the honourable member from, I was going to say Namatakula, Honourable Kurindrani, has raised the issue about, you know, the supposed contradiction about revitalizing informal settlements and the formalization. It's no contradiction, as the Honourable Member highlighted. Honourable Minister, please understand, the New Zealand government is also providing funding for this. The New Zealand government, together with Monash universities, there are certain informal settlements where people cannot be moved overnight. But you've got raw sewage going in. You've got water, drainage issues, footpath issues. That's what and the electricity, some of them, where we've got the approvals. But basic sanitation, you know, water accessibility, the drainage of it, sewage is a big problem. So we're trying, in the meantime, before we move them onto other sites or formalize those areas, we have to make sure they live in hygienic conditions. Otherwise, we've got a public health issue. So that's what it is. It's not actually a contradiction in itself. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Honourable Ratu Nangama.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. I also would like to speak in support of the motion, but more importantly, on the statement just provided to us by the Honourable Attorney General. The issue that I was raising, sir, that I sought clarification on is the Housing Authority, sir. Under the Housing Authority Act, the core function is to provide affordable housing. And under the Public Enterprise Act, the bottom line is profit. Yes, under the Public Enterprise Act. So this, under the national housing policy that is in Seg 7, sir, that's why I raised that point. I sought clarification on that point. They tend to conflict in each other. When you provide affordable housing, meaning to the layman it's cheap housing. But again, under Public Enterprise Act, that same statutory organization is to go for profit. Then the cost escalates, therefore, it won't be affordable, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Honourable Attorney General, you have the floor.
I'd like to correct the Honourable Member. No, you may not have read the new Public Enterprise Act. Remember, we had a Public Enterprise Act. There was amendments, there was certain repeal to certain provisions. This is simply the listing of that organization as a public enterprise. It does not necessarily mean, therefore, that there's a contradiction or conflict between the objectives of it being listed in the Public Enterprise Act and it being a housing authority organization created under statute. And you're driven by the statute. So there's no contradiction. And I think, unfortunately, there's probably a lack of understanding. I can explain to you later too. Mr. Speaker, so the other point that I also wanted to highlight, the reason why, for example, Honourable Tambuya, just getting back to your motion, the reason why we also have the R's in place, because you said, can it be used on informal settlement? No, it can't be, because this is taxpayers' fund specifically for people to own their own homes. When you actually fund people to build homes on informal settlements or vakavanua arrangements, they have essentially no possessory rights. So today, if I'm paying a landowner $30 a month as an informal arrangement, the next month the landowner can come and say, move. And everything that I've got there is gone. Now, this is why FNPF, for example, won't allow you to withdraw your funds, your housing eligibility, to build on Waka Vanua arrangements or informal settlements. But as we amended the law, this government amended the law, that we allow now members of land-owning units. If I am a member of a land-owning unit, I have a right to particular land, possessory rights, because I am a member of the land-owning unit. FNPF will allow me to withdraw my FNPF funds to build my home on my Matangali land. You see, there's a difference, because nobody can boot me out from the land where I have customary rights, which gives me legal rights to actually own that land. So FNPF says, okay, your money is secure. You see, because if you're going to allow people or give them access to funds, whether it's their own money from FNPF or whether it's taxpayers' fund, you give them the money, they build something, tomorrow it's gone, the money is gone. But if you allow FNPF withdrawal for land on which you own as a member of the land-owning unit, nobody can boot you out. That's your right. It's recognized under the Constitution. And that is your investment. If you, for example, in the same way, if you're going to use taxpayers' fund and somebody comes along and says, yippee, I've got $30,000 now, I've gone to a bank. Firstly, the bank won't give you a mortgage because the bank won't actually have secure collateral. You should know that. Bank won't have secure collateral. And therefore, if we still give them the $30,000 as you are proposing, tomorrow they can be booted out. The $30,000 is gone. You can be an Auditor General query. Why did you give somebody $30,000? They're supposed to have their own home, but tomorrow they don't have it. That's, unfortunately, is an irrationality in your proposal, because you want to cover that area. If you're saying purely to increase the funding, but under the current policy, that's a different matter. But if your objective is to increase the allocation to cover informal settlements, then you're actually throwing good money down the drain, because those people have absolutely no collateral. Because the point is this, one of the reasons why we want people to own their own homes is because then they have an asset. Then they can go to the bank and use that as collateral. There are so many people today in Fiji, they go to money lenders because they don't have any assets they can give as collateral to borrow money. So if tomorrow, my daughter is getting married, I need $5,000, there's a funeral in the family, I need additional $10,000 or whatever. Now, I go running off to the bank and the bank says, well, hang on, you borrowed already this much money because of your salary, but can you give us some asset we can use as security? No, they don't have it. So they go running off to the money lenders, paying 20% interest rate, 25% interest rate. What we're saying, the moment that you own your own home, whether it's strata title or duplex or individual home, you can then use that as collateral, go to the bank, they'll recognize that. So that's the difference. And that's why we want to ensure that when we give this $30,000, it's their own, whether it's on a 99-year lease or whether it's freehold land, Ethiopia land or Crown land or state land. It's a 99-year lease which is recognized as collateral.
Right. Honorable, we've had enough discussion on this motion. We will now vote on this motion. Do you still want to go ahead with the motion? There's no right of reply.
Honorable Chair, I may withdraw, so please be patient with me. Honorable Chair, I just want to acknowledge what the Honorable Attorney General has said. Basically, it's a bit of a contradiction, because here the government is trying to formalize informal settlements so that our people can get security. And that's been a promise from 2014 and to date. It still hasn't happened completely. It still hasn't happened completely. It still hasn't happened completely. So there's still, Honorable Chair, there's still 80,000 people living in informal and squatter settlements that will not be entitled to this grant, because he's talking about insecurity, and that's the government's issue. They should be solving the security of tenure. Honorable Speaker, the other point is that he has made is that only people who are in Matangali land can access FNPF now for their housing. What about those in informal settlements? What is their solution? That we haven't heard that. What is the solution now that they can access their FNPF so that they can also access this fund and build a home. So, Honorable Chair, I think the minister should just admit that they don't have money to focus on our people in informal settlements.
Let me respond to
80,000 people, informal and squatter settlements, to give them security of tenure. So on that point, Honorable Chair, I withdraw my motion. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, sir, I need to correct what she has just said. As if, no, but you've made a statement saying that nothing was done.
Order.
You can't get away with that.
Order. Order. You've withdrawn your motion. That's it. Right. We move on. The Parliament will now vote on head number 23. The question is that the amount of head number 23, Ministry of Housing and Community Development, be approved. Does any member oppose the motion? No. As no member opposes, the head is agreed to. Yes, we'll do it now. Honorable members, on that note, we'll suspend proceedings for refreshments in the big committee room. Parliament will resume in half an hour. Make sure you're on time in half an hour, because I won't be waiting. Remember that. Thank you. Secretary General.
Head number 24, Ministry of Women, Children and Poverty Alleviation.
Program 1, Activity 1. Honorable Rondrondo, Charlotte Rondrondo.
Thank you, Chair. I have, without notice, tabled motions, and if I could be just guided on which one I could move now, sir.
You just hold that for the time. Program 1, Activity 1. Does anyone else wanting to contribute to that? No? Right. This is the only one? You have the floor to move your motion.
Which one?
Activity 1, Seg 6.
Thank you, Chair. I move the motion without notice on the increase of the Fiji National Council of Disabled Persons for another $500,000. Thank you, Chair.
Second.
Is there a seconder?
Second. Yeah.
Honorable Solicitor Rondo, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I move that motion in regards to the contribution for the Fiji National Council of Disabled Persons, which at one time it was pegged at $1 million. I believe it was the 2018-2019 budget. And I move for the increase, Chair. It's because of the mandate that has been given to the Fiji Council of Disabled Persons under the Act. And also I note, Chair, that under Program 1, Activity 1, but in, I believe in Seg 7, there are other contributions aligned to people living with disability. For example, grants to organization, that's $400,000. Economic empowerment for disabled persons, $20,000. Implementation of rights of disabled persons for $50,000. And in total, Mr. Chair, sir, if we look at activities in regards to the protection of the rights of people living with disabilities, under that program, we have $470,000 plus the 500. That's about $970,000 only, on Mr. Chair, for us to be able to look after the rights of people living with disabilities in regards to their employment and other rights. And under the Act, the FNCDP is the mandated authority for the effective implementation of the Act, which we have assigned to. And I believe it is important that they are resourced appropriately so that they could be effective in their mandate in having to look after the whole of the programs and non-government organizations that undertake work in the protection of the rights of people with, living with disability, Chair. So along those lines, I'm moving that the current allocation for FNCDP be moved by 500,000 to bring it to $1 million. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Honorable Naguralevu.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Please, can I ask the Minister to update this House in regards to the construction of the Barefoot College with allocation of $3 million? Will be able to complete the project? Thank you.
at the moment. Honorable Minister, you have the floor.
Thank you, Honorable Chair.
I thought you were wanting to participate in the motion. Right. Honorable Minister, you have the floor.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I had referred to this during my response to the budget speech. When we talk about the rights of people living with disabilities, I ask that we not only look at the budget for the Ministry of Women, Children and Poverty Alleviation. Yes, we have the policy mandate for people living with disabilities, but this is only a portion of what government gives for services relating to persons living with disabilities. I'll give a few examples. If you look at the Ministry of Economy's budget, they have, for example, the construction of the Western Disabled Center. Even though that will fall under the management of the Ministry of Women, that budget is allocated to Ministry of Economy to oversee the construction of that building. Then we talk about the grant to Hilton Special School of $700,000. Again, that's under the Ministry of Economy. Scholarship scheme for special children, $478,000. That's Ministry of Economy. Ministry of Housing, accessibility, which the Honorable Minister for Housing spoke about, $100,000. Ministry of Youth and Sports, sports grants for persons with disabilities, $50,000. Ministry of Education, grants to special schools, $3.1 million. Community rehab under Ministry of Health, $5,000. Mental health, and the list goes on. So in total, we're looking at $21.8 million across 6 ministries of government that specifically deal with the rights of persons living with disabilities. So to the Honorable Member, what is provided for under the Ministry of Women, Children and Poverty Alleviation has basically to do with policy, the policy mandate, plus a bit for grants to organizations that provide services. But we are not the only ministry that has a budget for them.
Thank you. Any further contributions to this debate? Honorable Militia Gonibaravi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. Program 1, Activity 1, Seg 6, grant to Girls Home, 100,000. Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right. We've dealt with that. We move on to your next motion.
Which one? Domestic. Thank you, Chair. I also move without notice a motion to increase the budgetary allocation and domestic violence support, which right now is pegged at 30,000, and I had moved that it be increased by 70,000 to bring it to 100,000. And Chair, the reason being, Fiji is one of the highest, one of the countries in the world with the highest incidence of domestic violence. And as we hear in the news, in the media, that with these COVID-19 restrictions, there has been a marked increase again in domestic violence. And the contributing factors to this are various. It is important that the ministry plays that lead role in regards to addressing effectively or eliminating violence against women.
Is there a seconder?
Sorry, Chair.
I second the motion,
You have
Chair.
the floor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sorry about that, and I will just continue. It is the current situation that we are in right now because of the economic challenges and also social challenges that we are faced with. So it is important that the ministry be resourced appropriately with at least another $70,000 to be able to spearhead the various work that that other organizations are undertaking, for example, Fiji Women's Crisis Center and other organizations that do undertake work against violence against women. So on that note, Chair, I'm moving that motion that 70,000 be allocated to bring the current amount of 30,000 to 100,000 for that particular segment on domestic violence support. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Honourable Linda Tambua, you have the floor.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. I support the motion and just wish to add to commend the Ministry for Women for the lines, the telephone lines that the women were able to call into. I understand it has gone up by about 500, they've received a number of calls plus, and just to have that avenue. So this increase, Honourable Chair, would help more in facilitating a way for women and children and anyone experiencing domestic violence to be able to call in and get that assistance. Perhaps to add to that in terms of counseling or safe houses, other things that could be added. I know that there are churches and organizations that have safe houses, but clearly not enough at this time. So I do support the motion, and just visiting also with single moms in informal and squatter settlements where they have experienced a lot of domestic violence. It's a very tough situation where they have to remove themselves from the homes. There would be good to have this budget increase so that the Ministry for Women can continue with their good work and be more ably to cope with the complaints and the need that comes through. Thank you, Honourable Chair.
Thank you. Honourable Minister, you have the floor.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. I think there's a misunderstanding on what this budget item is for. The $30,000 domestic violence support fund, that will actually cater for just the admin costs of putting together a mechanism to establish a fund. It's not actually, I think they're thinking that this is going to contribute directly to survivors of violence. No. We heard about the domestic violence helpline, for example, that Honourable Tambuya referred to. There is a budget item for that, and that's funded separately by government. And again, the safe houses, that's separately funded as well. So when we're talking about domestic violence, it's a holistic thing. It's not one, this is just one part of the entire mechanism for addressing domestic violence. Apart from this, we will come through the other activities as well, where there's donor funding for domestic violence aided projects. So this is just the admin cost, Honourable Member, to establish a mechanism for a domestic violence support fund. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Honourable Member. You moved your third motion.
Thank you, Chair, sir. I move the motion without notice that the construction of Fiji Barefoot College be removed from Program 1, Activity 1, SEG 8. Thank you, Chair.
Is there a seconder?
A second, Honourable Chair.
You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I know this has been one of my pet projects too, that I had been trying to push the Minister for Women for its implementation. But for this time, which I'm sort of gladly surprised that it's pegged at 3 million, and maybe in her response, the Minister for Women would then enlighten us on the progress of the construction of the Barefoot College and whether this 3 million would be able to complete it for the year. Otherwise, Mr. Chair, sir, the timing, I believe, is not right. It is not a priority right now. And right now, there are people struggling with their daily lives in regards to food on the table, in regards to other family needs. So I'm moving the motion that this particular item be taken out but not taken out of the budget, but be reassessed and reviewed to contribute to other SEGs that do contribute to the economic empowerment of families, and particularly women in the informal sector that may have also lost their small business in regards to the onslaught that has been brought about by COVID-19. Thank you, Mr. Chair, sir.
Thank you. Honorable Minister, you have the floor.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I had referred to this in my budget response, that construction has actually started. The Barefoot College is a phased project. It's for the past the current financial year, the money that has been paid to the contractor is around $800,000 in accordance with the phases of the project. For this current year, it's 3 million. I believe after that, there will be a balance of about 600,000 or something for the following financial year, in accordance with the construction plan. Now, the Honourable Member has referred to why this is not the right time for this project. In her response, she spoke about when you give a person a fish, you feed that person for a day. You teach that person how to fish, you feed that person, the family, for a year. This is it. This is teaching women how to fish. And it's especially during a time like this, during COVID, that projects such as Barefoot College, it's going to teach rural women livelihood programs. It's going to teach them how to come up with projects within the communities that they live in. Apart from solar engineering, there will be other livelihood projects in that center. Beekeeping, for example. Other projects that women can use within the communities, rural women can use in the communities that they live in. So it's in such a time like this that we need projects like Barefoot. It's teaching women how to fish. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further contributions to the Program 1, Activity 1? Honorable
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. I'd like to speak on, well, there is an allocation here that appears both at SEC 6 and SEC 10. It's grants to voluntary organization under SEC 6, 200,000, all under R. And there is another one, a similar name, SEG 10, grants to voluntary organization, 100,000. So I'd like to speak on that allocation, sir. A question to the Madam Minister for Women is what criteria are sought for from organizations that would want to be assisted under this grant to voluntary organization? I am proposing consideration for the Song of Amrame Toke, a body that was established in 1924, well over 96 years old. They carry out a lot of activities to assist women, empowering women, socio-economic programs in the villages. I'm wondering whether they could be assisted under this scheme and what would be the criteria that they should submit if they are to be assisted by government. I know that previous governments used to make a grant for the Songs of Amarame Toke. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Minister for Women, you have the floor.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. The grants to voluntary organizations in SEGs 6 and 10, that's not for women's organizations. These are for the 8 children's homes around the country that take care of children that fall under the Director of Social Welfare. So for SEG 6, that's for operational costs. The government normally gives them a grant every year for the taking care of the children, and the SEG 10 one is for capital. If they need repairs, for example, they can ask for that money as well. It's for the 8 children's homes.
So through you, Honorable Chair, is there any other allocation in your ministry that could assist other women organizations such as the Song Song Bamaramit, okay?
That's coming up in another activity, ma'am. Thank you.
Honorable Dr. Attorney Alon Balabu, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Just need clarification from the Honourable Minister with regards to SEG 8, construction of aged care home. As a member of the Social Affairs Committee, you had visited Lambasa, and I think they were planning for construction of a new home. Does that come under this?
Yes, that that budget item is specifically to finish off the Lambasa project. Thank you.
We move on. Activity 2. Program 2, Activity 1. Program 2, Activity 2.
Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair.
Right. Honorable Levere.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just I seek clarification from the Honourable Minister, Mr. Chair, on SEG 5 in terms of that commission charges. What are these? And we have some clarifications on that item, please.
Program?
Yeah, it's SEG 5. Program 2, Activity 2. SEG 5.
Honorable Minister, you have the floor.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. This is the commission that government pays to banks for the beneficiaries' accounts, the social welfare beneficiaries that receive assistance from government. There's a bank fee involved that covers it. Government pays for that.
Honorable Biman Prasad, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Program 2, Activity 2, SEG 6. The Poverty Benefit Scheme Minister, is your ministry, there'd be a lot more people, I think, who would be, or who, if not already fallen below poverty line, but there'd be a lot more falling into that category. And the demand on your ministry, and particularly for poverty benefit scheme allocation, is going to be more than what it was before. I'm just wondering whether your ministry is doing some assessment and whether this allocation of 38 million will be sufficient to look at or meet those demands, and whether your ministry is also looking at supporting some of the other organizations which are actually involved on the ground, providing food for people and helping people to make ends meet. So some clarification from you would be useful, and whether the ministry is engaged in any surveys to deal with that. Thank you.
Honorable Minister, you have the floor.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. The poverty benefit scheme that's reflected in the budget for the ministry has, you would know, is an ongoing thing. It's got its own standard operating procedures. I think you're asking your question in the context of COVID-related unemployment, and I would ask the Minister for Economy to answer that, as that would fall outside of the mandate of the ministry and is taken care of through packages that have been announced by the Ministry of Economy.
Thank you. Honorable Minister for Economy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just to elaborate on that, this is why we call it the unemployment benefit scheme. So unemployment benefit scheme obviously are for those people who have lost their jobs, have reduced hours, so we're now supplementing their income, as opposed to getting them onto the permanent poverty benefit scheme. It's also quite psychological too. A lot of people are quite happy about that because we are churning it through the FNPF, those people who have formal employment. So that's how we managed to separate it. So currently, we've obviously the allocation that we've given to the Ministry of Women and Poverty Alleviation, in fact, is sufficient to cater for that. The one other point I wanted to make was in respect of the commission charges. Honorable Lavere, you asked the question. We have the commission charges paid about $3 to Westpac for every transaction. We've now negotiated with BSP. They're now charging us $2.80. So we're hoping to get all the social welfare recipients moved from Westpac accounts to BSP accounts. And BSP also, you'll see in Head 50, we also pay them additional funding for carrying out rural banking services through the postal offices. So it ties in well to get BSP to be the deliverer of services for social welfare recipients and also providing rural banking facilities too. Some of the recipients also receive their amounts through the post offices. So we also pay an 8% to the Fiji Post for the redemption of those vouchers, etc., in respect of the vouchers that are being given or the money that's transferred to them through the post offices too. That's what it covers.
Thank you. Honorable Bulanoza, you have the floor.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Just clarification, on activity 2, Seg 6, on bus fare program for all disabled persons. How successful has it been? Because there's been a lot of stories have been told about, there's been a lot of, how successful has it been? But there's been a lot of complaints about going to top up their bus fare cards, no money there. Or particularly in Wainunu, when they travel to Lambasa, this way only they can top up their bus fare. It costs them $36, $18 up to Lambasa and $18 back, just to get a $40 top up. Is there any solution to that for any other area where they can easily access their top up for bus fares? Thank you.
I didn't get the question. Was there, I'm sorry, was there a question? What was the question?
How successful is it? How
it's
successful?
very successful, thank you.
Yes. So.
No, it's a clear, yeah, there's been complaints about when they go and top up their cards, there's no money there, and they don't have to come back another day, and the cost, particularly where they go and top up in Lambasa, particularly from Wainunu, I'm talking about, they travel there $18 up to Lambasa and $18 back. There's $36 altogether for $40 topping up.
Chair, only people from Wainunu would spend $36 to go and top up a $40 card.
Well, there's a complaint. Just go up there. They should have provide access in number one or somewhere else, but cheaper to go up there and get their top up. That's a service that you need to do.
Honorable Tuisawa, we have the floor. After this, then I'll give
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, sir, Honorable Minister, thank you. Regarding on that same seg, food voucher for rural pregnant mothers, how successful has that been? Maybe an update on the usage. And the other issue, Honorable Minister, was the monitoring and evaluation regarding all these programs. Maybe just a general update on how that is done, what mechanisms or framework are in place to ensure this is utilized as mandated. Thank you.
Honorable Minister, you have the floor.
Thank you. In relation to the rural pregnant mothers food voucher, again, I'd said this in my speech as well, for the current financial year, it's over 3,000 women that were assisted in this. And what was the other question? The budget has actually increased, just judging from the trends over the years.
The other question was on the general monitoring and evaluation of the programs, the frameworks, to ensure this is used as...
We do have a unit within the ministry under the Department of Poverty Monitoring Unit that carry out a monitoring and evaluation of government's programs in relation to the ones under the ministry. Thank you.
Honorable Saloti Rondrondo, you can move your motion on activity 2, Seg 6.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. And I move a motion without notice on the increase to the poverty benefit scheme by 10 million.
Is there a seconder?
Second.
You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. That motion is being moved in recognition of the 38 million that's currently being allocated. But like as I have mentioned before, the current situation we are faced with right now, particularly, I'm bringing this up in particular focus with the women in the informal sector that will be affected by this economic downturn. For example, those women in the flea market, those women with other business in the informal sector, market vendors, that may not be included in the FNPF. I recognize the contribution from the Honorable Minister for Economy on that particular allocation. That I applaud, but my concern and why I'm moving for this particular allocation to be increased is for those that may not benefit from that one under the FNPF scheme and may fall into the gap. And the increase in this one, which I'm sure would cater for the increase in applications that's going to be forthcoming in regards to the particular economic downturn that we are faced with right now. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Honorable Attorney General, you have the floor.
Just to provide also some clarification, yes, whilst the focus has been on FNPF, Honourable Member, you may recall that in the 1920 COVID response budget, we also had specifically stated the informal sector of those people who worked in the informal sector. When there was a lockdown, they had the ability to come and access funds from through the government itself. So obviously, if there is a appetite for that, we get a lot of requests for that. That $100 million obviously can cater for that also, because as we have seen, and you will see the 100 million line item in head 50, it says unemployment benefits $100 million. Now, you may also recall that in the budget announcement, we had said we have earmarked $5 million for that, for also upskilling or reskilling people from within that particular scheme. So if there is a need for supplementing the incomes of those people in the informal sector who have left out or been left out or who need assistance, we can also cater for them. The Ministry of Labour, as the Minister highlighted, is also carrying out a survey. As the Minister has also highlighted, their survey is being carried out by other ministries. The Ministry of Commerce, Trade and Tourism currently has also been carrying out, and if you recall, I think the Minister had also mentioned in Parliament that the survey found out that nearly 70% of the people who actually responded were from the informal sector. And how, I can't remember the exact percentage, what percentage of them had said that their revenue or the incomes on a daily basis had fallen. So they actually have the data. So we can also work with them through that particular set of series of data that we have to be able to target, assist people. Now, one of the reasons why we did not put them in the social welfare recipient area is the psychology of it also. Because we want people to be able to know that for a period of time they're being assisted. As soon as the businesses gets up, for example, the example I've used, the lady who sells boiled EV outside Fiji Airways office is no longer able to get any business because there's nobody working at Fiji Airways. Now, once the offices start filling up, the flight attendants start coming through, she'll get her business up and running. But she won't be on social welfare, she won't be a social welfare recipient. The criteria for social welfare recipient, obviously, there's quite a few things, check-offs that they have to do. They also do an asset test, etc. Now, these people will already have asset. They won't necessarily be actually qualify under those requirements. So we've kept it fairly flexible to be able to respond with that $100 million. So that's the reason. And that's why that if you see that one line item we put there specifically, we did not say unemployment benefit only for FNPF, recipients or formal, informal sector. We've kept that flexible. as opposed to what we did in 2019-2020 response. So I hope that addresses your concern. And obviously it is in our interest to make sure that these people, don't get onto the streets. They actually do have an income. They are able to live.
Chair?
Thank you. Honorable
Thank
Member
you.
Tambuya.
Just following on from that, Honorable Attorney General, exactly how does one from the informal sector now access that fund if it's not through FNPF? Thank you.
Well, we had already announced this. In fact, a lot of people have already applied for this in the 1920 through the Ministry of Economy. We had different agencies that distributed the forms for us, and people went and applied. People from Lautoka, for example, those who in the lockdown areas, and they've been given sums of money which we have processed. At that point in time, they were given, from memory, $300 one-off at that point in time because of the lockdown. So obviously we can then fine-tune that based on the data that we'll get. Please try and understand that there are also people who may try and fleece the system also. Because you need to, suddenly people will say, I had a business, I was informally selling, EV there, or selling mithai there, whatever it is, but they probably were sitting at home. Somebody else was earning money. So we have to make sure that, the criteria, all the checkoffs are done. And with the data that we currently are getting in, there's a flexibility in the budget to be able to respond to those kind of needs.
Thank you. Honorable Salota Rondoro, you can move your other motion.
Thank you, Chair. I move a motion without notice on the increase of bus fare program for old and disabled persons to an increase of 7 million. Thank you.
Second.
Is there a seconder?
Second.
Six.
Activity
Program
2,
Activity 2, 6.
Seg 6.
She wants it to go to from 6
You have the floor.
to 7 million.
Thank you, Chair. That motion is being moved in acknowledging and in recognizing the problems that this particular category of our population are faced with right now. Previously, the allocation was pegged at about 13 million, and the request is that 7 million just to take us back to that level, to that previous level, so that we go back to the initial allocation of $40, which has been reduced to $10 now. And furthermore, Mr. Chair, the current situation we are in right now, if we really are concerned about our senior citizen, then they really need this kind of allocation so that they can at least get out of their homes, take a breather to visit families and friends, or just take a bus ride so that they could at least be able to just sort of wind out their frustrations and whatever psychological problems that they might be faced with. And having to shut people into their homes at that age, and a lot of us are moving into that age, I mean, we would agree that we don't want to be contained in our, I'm speaking for myself, on Mr. Chair. And just to give them a quality of life, until that day. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Honorable Minister, you have the floor.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. The Honorable Member has asked for an increase in bus fares. We need to remember we're not living in normal times. And if you're looking at the beneficiaries of these bus fares, the elderly and the disabled, they're already receiving an allowance from government every month, most of them. The elderly, the social pension scheme, and the disability allowance. So government has to do this exercise, reprioritize. It doesn't mean we haven't blanked them out of the budget books. They're there. We remember them. But what we're trying to say is it's time to rethink everything. It's COVID. We're talking about bus fares. Livelihoods are very important for the disabled, for the elderly, which is why we haven't touched those allowances. And in fact, for the disabilities, there's a top-up for them coming up with the support of DFAT. We need to remember that in the context of COVID. This is a budget that's in the context of COVID. Thank you.
Thank you. Activity 3, Program 3, Activity 1. Honorable
Thank you.
Andilitio and Johnny Barabi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. I think the question that I raised earlier, I see Seg 6, women institutions. I will not repeat the question. I can, the Honourable Minister, identify the criteria that the Songsan Vamaramitoke can comply with in order to get the grant from government. Thank you.
If I can just make a quick statement here, Chair. I was at the funeral on last Sunday. The lady representing the Songsan Vamarama informed all of us in the funeral that they don't need money from government.
What they do? I think there must be some miscommunication, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Chairperson, sir. Can the Honourable Minister?
You have the floor, Minister.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. For Seg 6, we can see there's a NGO grants. That grant is available for women's organizations that work to empower women. They apply for it. They apply for it, and the Department of Women will assess how these organizations have assisted women in the empowerment sector, how many, for example, and how. For the women's institutions, this is specifically targeted at a number of institutions. The Mbao Women's Forum, the McCoy Vocational Center, the Homes of Hope, Mbao Women's Forum, McCoy Vocational, and Homes of Hope, and Lifebread, Almana Hope Center. These are women. And women's shelter as well. We have a safe house, Honorable Tambuya, is coming up. That budget is specifically targeted at these organizations. Government has been giving them grants over the years because of the number of women that they've been empowering in the programs that they carry out. If you take the McCoy Vocational Center, for example, it empowers single mothers or women living in situations of poverty to learn livelihood programs. Mbao Women's Forum does the same. Almana Hope Center looks at widows. So those are the things that the Department of Women looks at in determining whether an organization will get a grant and how much. So women's organizations are free to apply for it. It will depend on what they do in the empowerment of women in order to get a grant if they wish.
Thank you. Honorable members, we will now go into the process of voting on the motions. And I'll explain the process. It's not in the order that they are presented. It's in the order of the sums that are involved. So the highest amount in the motion is first, followed by the lesser amounts. So don't be surprised. Honorable members, the motion is that head 24 be increased by 10 million in program 2, activity 2, seg 6, poverty benefit scheme. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say nay. Nay. The nays have it. Honorable members, the next motion is that head 24 be increased by 7 million in program 2, activity 266 with respect to bus fare program for old disabled persons. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say nay. Nay. The nays have it. The third motion, that head 24 be increased by $500,000 in Program 1, Activity 1, Seg 6, with respect to Fiji Council for National Council for Disabled Persons. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say nay. Nay. The nays have it. The next motion, that head 24 be increased by $700,000 in Program 1, by $70,000 in Program 1, Activity 1, Seg 7, Domestic Violence Support. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say nay. Nay. Nays have it. The next motion is that $3 million be left out of head 24 in Program 1, Activity 1, Seg 10, Construction of Fiji Barefoot College. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say nay. Nay. The nays have it. Honorable members, Parliament will now vote on head 24. The question is that the amount of head number 24, Ministry for Women, Children and Poverty Alleviation, be approved. Does any member oppose the motion? Yes. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say nay. Nay. The ayes just have it. As the head is agreed to. Don't shout into your mic because Secretary General.
Head number 25, Ministry of Youth and Sports.
Program 1, Activity 1.
Motion.
Honorable Rasuliano Matantombua.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Clarification to the Minister. Can the Minister clarify to the House the purpose allocation of 25,000? This is Z5. Z5. On the review of Fiji National Youth National Youth Band Curriculum. What is the review for?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Last year, you will recall, the House will recall, that there was fund allocated to review the National Youth Band. And the review of the National Band have completed with recommendation. One of the recommendation is to review the curriculum of the band. And that is why we have been allocated $25,000 to work with the Fiji National University to do the curriculum. Thank you.
Thank you. Activity 1? Is
Yes.
that?
Yes.
Honorable Andiliti Amjone Barabi.
Seg 5, sir. Social media management, 44,500.
Activity 1. This is program 1, activity 1. Honorable Ratu Philip.
Thank you, Chairman. Activity 1, regarding the upgrade of youth training centers. Could Honorable Minister please explain this and what the status is and locations? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, the funding will assist the ministry continue to improve the upgrading of our Nalemba Youth Training Center, Nangere Youth Training Center, and Nassau Training Center. There will be also some upgrading works at the Valelevu Youth Training Center, and that is what that money is allocated for. Thank you.
Naka.
Thank you. Activity 2, Honorable Radisuliano Voritumbua.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Chair, this is in regard to the 30,000 allocation for youth and sports development. And the Minister, Z7, can the Minister explain to the House who will qualify to have access in the grant?
Obviously not you and I. Honorable Minister, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just about to say that definitely not him, but you have said it. Mr. Chairman, this allocation is for the youth leadership training, youth camp, and sports training, and those who will qualify with the age of 15 to 35. Thank you.
Activity 3. Honorable Etienne Gyonimbaravi, you have the floor.
Chairperson, Social Media Management for 44,500. The Honorable Minister informed the House the justifications for this sum of $44,500. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, early last year, Ministry decided to invest in building up the Ministry's information system, one of which was definitely the social media. So the Ministry went ahead to do the proper process, and that is in terms of advertisement, to find out a reputable supplier. Mr. Chairman, I can tell you that the Ministry's Facebook page now, for example, reaches and engages hundreds of thousands of Fijians every month. So it has really worked for Ministry, and we are now directly in touch with our stakeholders. It has done 50, 60 times more than what Ministry used to do before by engaging this supplier. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Program 2, Activity 1. Honorable Linda Tambua, you have the floor.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Program 2, Activity 1, Seg 4. I'd just like to point out a correction. There is an error. The amount totaling in that Seg is 21,000, whereas it shows under the figures that it's 26,000. So that could be corrected by the Ministry for Economy. Seg 4, vehicle, fuel and oil, etc., does not add up to 26,000 as listed in the estimates on the left. But the other point I wanted to make, Honourable Chair, about the under Seg 6, which is the Netball Youth World Cup. As I understand, it has been postponed because of COVID. Fiji was supposed to host it next year in June 2021. As we know, there are a lot of young girls that aspire for netball. It's still the biggest sport for girls in Fiji. What is the Ministry or the government's commitment for this tournament, Minister? If you could just clarify that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, Fiji government has committed to the Netball Fiji in the preparation and of hosting when the time is right. Thank you.
Honorable Dr. Philip Tisawa, we have the floor. We'll take the young person first.
Thank you, Chairman. On overseas sports tournaments, given the COVID-19, also this morning the sevens tournaments were cancelled in, I think, Dubai and South Africa. Is there any amendment to that? And second question is on Sec 10, Rural Sports Complex. I note Kandavu is there. Is there any allocation for other rural sports grounds? Vinaka.
Thank you. Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Overseas sporting tournaments. This fund, 1 million, will be given to the Fiji National Sports Commission to be given to the National Sporting Organization to prepare for the Tokyo Olympics. That is what that fund is for. And on the rural grounds, you will see that construction of the rural sport complex, Vanessa, has been included in it. Just last week, I had a meeting with the RFM engineers and the engineers from Ministry of Works to see how we can approach this project and complete. And they have given us assurance that they will start work once we will have a site visit and see what are some of the scope of works that needs to be done. So there we are in regards to the sporting ground. Thank you.
Yes, Honorable Gergera Tambua.
Thank you, Chair. Under Program 2, Activity 1, Seg 6, there is an allocation of $2 million to the Fiji Sports Council. It had been allocated $850,000 in the COVID-19 budget. Just two questions, one question, in fact. When will Parliament get the Sports Council's annual report? Thank you, Chair.
Honorable Minister.
You want to know what is this allocation for? Or you interested in the annual report? Both? Okay. First one, Fiji's, the Fiji National Sports Commission. You want to know about Fiji National Sports Commission or Sports Council? Sports Council, okay. The budget allocation will assist Fiji Sports Council to cater for its operational cost and mitigate the impact of COVID-19 on the revenue collection. As you all are aware, I'm sure you all are aware, that their facilities has not been used. And there has been some commitments in terms of repayment, and that is why you see that there is increase in that as well. Also the property insurance and bills for electricity, water, and operational costs. That's what is allocated for. The annual report, as soon as it's ready, we will table in the House. Thank you.
Honorable Attorney General, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sir, Mr. Chair, sir, my apologies, and I have to thank Honorable Tambuya for picking this up. In fact, the team had notified us about the, if you look at Seg 4, she's correct. If you add the current figures in Seg 4, it adds up to 21,000, not 26,000 as it is in the column in the estimates. Incidentals actually should have been 10,000. So if you put incidentals to 10,000 instead of 5,000, it'll add up to 26. And that was the error, the typesetting error. Sorry? What else is incorrect? Nothing else, unless you pick it up, of course.
All right. I'm getting to that.
Honorable members, Parliament will now vote on head number 25. The question is that the amount of head number 25, Ministry of Youth and Sports, be approved. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those against say nay. Nay. The ayes have it. Head is agreed to. Secretary General.
Head number 26, Higher Education Institutions.
Program 1, Activity 1.
Mr. Chair.
Honorable Levere, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's just a clarification on the Technical College of Fiji. There's no allocation in the budget for this year. Can you have some clarification on that?
Honourable Member, you may recall it's with the FNU now. Remember it moved across to FNU? That's right.
Move across.
Catch the bus, catch the bus.
Honorable Philip Tisawao.
Thank you, Chair. Sec 6 on the USP. Could you please provide an update on the grants to USP regarding the last financial year and the next one, which we are discussing now? Thank you.
I don't have the figures now regarding previous year, but I can get that for you in question time. But we are very concerned about USP. I can tell you that much. We are very concerned about the financial management at USP and the manner in which currently the administration is running university. And we, of course, will need to also understand how our monies are being spent. Fiji, for the information of everybody else, contributes over 80% or close to 80% of the total grant funding that all the other Pacific Island countries give. So Fiji was giving, over here we've got of course $27 million. The next highest grant country is, I think, Solomon Islands from memory, $2 million. That's the point of difference between the amount of grant we give and what the next country gives. And there are a lot of anomalies, as the Pro-Chancellor has also raised, also the Audit and Risk Committee Chairperson has raised, and we'll work through university in respect of the USP regarding that.
Thank you.
Honorable Chair.
Honorable Tumbuya, you have the floor.
Thank you. Can I get a clarification on under Seg 6 on Montfort Boys Town and Montfort Technical Institute? Notice there's a reduction in their budget allocation. And there's a reduction. These are technical vocational skills investment. Just want the clarification from the minister about why this is the case. When at this time we want to upskill and improve trade amongst our young people. Thank you.
There is no reduction from the previous year, 2019-2020. You can see, for example, Montfort Boys Town, 572.6, and this year they'll be getting 572.6. Montfort Technical College, 372.9, they'll be getting 372.9, so there's no reduction.
Right. Honorable members, we will now vote on head number 26. The question is that the amount of head number 26, higher education institutions, be approved. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. The head is agreed to. Secretary General.
Head number 30, Ministry of Agriculture.
Program 1, Activity 1. Honorable Tikondodo.
Mr. Chair, can we...
You have the floor, Honorable Tikondodo.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Program 1, Activity 1, Sec 10. In respect of the allocation for Agricultural Marketing Authority and CBUL. In the COVID-19 response budget, AMA was granted 5.6 million and CBUL 6.183. So this budget has AMA grant reduced to 2 million, CBUL is increased to 6.9. Now this is to us a substantial reduction for AMA. And we believe that a time when our cash crop producers need every assistance to ensure ease of access for their produce, particularly when agriculture can be a savior for the economy. And at the same time, CIBUL grant has been increased. So what we would like to know if the utilization for land is for agricultural purpose, because that is what the increase suggests, or more land to be utilized. So some clarification from the Minister would be good. Thank you.
Thank you. Honourable Minister, you have the floor.
Chairman, on the IMA capital grant, that's a capital grant, not an operating grant. The capital component, we have some reserves at IMA, and we are comfortable in terms of using the reserves for capital purchases. The capital purchases that we are looking at is basically we want to establish new pickup points in Western Division as well as in Wanmalevu. Wanmalevu we're looking at in Wanikoro and expanding Dama and expanding and establishing at in Bua in terms of processing. So at the moment we have got only one chilling, one cool storage facility in Wanmalevu. So when we expand our pickup points in the Western Division and in Wainukoro, we will need transport as well. So we worked out that we will be okay with that, and we will also be using our reserve funds. Now, with regard to the CIBUL money, the increase is basically to reflect the additional land that we will be looking at utilizing, and therefore paying the 4% over the 6% paid by the tenant and 4% to be paid by government, which is the CIBUL payment. So 10% of UCV.
Honourable Kurundrani, do you have the floor?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, sir. On the 30,
Move on, move on. You want to move your motion? Yes,
Yeah.
you have the floor.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, sir, I have several motions to move.
I
want to move the first motion, the head 30 on program 1, activity 1, sec 6, for the Tutu Training Center to increase to $385,949. Second motion is head 30.
Hold it. Hold it. Is there a seconder to that first
Second.
motion? You can speak to your motion now.
Yeah, I think we are facing a hard time right now where we have to rely on agriculture. And according to the program of agriculture, that we need to focus on the transition from subsistence farming to semi-commercial and to commercial farming. And we need the people that need to be trained to implement this program. So that is why I'm moving motion to improve the Tutu Training Center, which has been successful for quite some time now. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Respond to that.
Honourable Minister.
It's not only Tutu that we are supporting, and which is producing hands-on students, supporting Tutu agriculture program, supporting Nabuso agriculture program, supporting got the entire FNU agriculture college, which also has a component on certificate 1 and 2 on commercial agriculture that we're supporting. We have also established a program, joint MOU with Nabuso Agriculture College and FNU College of Agriculture, that all the students that comes out of this commercial agriculture program, we will provide them with the package in terms of 6 months before they graduate, they will give us a worksheet of where these students are from, how much land area they have, a consent from the village Matangali that they are allowed to use this land. We will, 6 months before we get the data, we will prepare the land, organize some planting material. So on the day the student graduates and goes back to the village, the planting material will be ready for the student, land preparation will begin, and we will also do farm road and drainage. That's the package we're giving to all the students who are coming out of Nabuso, and the certificate 1 and 2 students who graduate out of certificate 1 and 2 program in commercial agriculture at FNU. So this is the program that we have to get in young graduates who are trained and skilled to get into agriculture to deal with the issue of aging farmers.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Honorable Kundari, you can move your second motion.
My second motion, Mr. Chair, is regarding Head 30 for the Nabuso Agriculture School. We also need to increase the budget allocation for the Nabuso Agriculture Schools by 334,000. Mr. Speaker, sir, I'm saying...
Is there a seconder?
Yes, a second motion.
Wake up. Yeah.
Mr. Speaker, sir, why I'm for this increase, because we need to expand that institution. We need to get more students to participate in this program. As I already said, that we are facing a hard time now, where we will only rely on agriculture to help us drive this economy. So we need to put more programs, provide the facilities, the infrastructure that suits the students to be developed so that they can grasp the idea of these transition programs from commercial farming to fully commercial. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Honorable Minister.
Chair, just to add on to what I mentioned earlier, we have, apart from the grant that we provide to Tutu and Nabuso Agriculture College, we also have provided to them, capital equipments. For example, recently, for Tutu Training Center, we provided them with a dryer, a large commercial industrial dryer to convert their fruits into dried fruits for candies. Nabuso Agricultural College, we have given them, last time we gave them a tractor. So it's every now and then, on request, we do provide them with capital support. Last year, we had established orchards at Nabuso Agriculture College, which they have got a few fruits orchard that they have established. So this is not the only cash grant that we are providing them, but we also provide them with other support as and when needed.
Thank you. Honorable Bulitavu, you have the floor.
Just also to contribute, also to probably request the Minister, in terms of not only focusing on those who are already in the program, certificate 2 and 3 in FNU and also Nabuso and also Tutu, but to focus on those in the informal sector who can be brought in or recruited into those institutions so they can be trained in terms of getting certificate in agriculture. Given that now agriculture has changed, we're moving commercially and mechanized system, and also the knowledge of things that are coming, fertilizer are changing. If we can also widen the net and try to get those in our villages to be enrolled into those streams so that they come back and become agents of change in terms of the revolutionization of agriculture.
Activity 2? Activity 3? Activity 4? Honorable Kurundrani, you have the
Mr. Chairman, sir, I move that the Head 30, Program 1, Activity 4, that we need to increase the agriculture show to 400,000, to make it to 500,000.
Is there a seconder?
Second.
Thank you. You have the floor, Honorable Kurundrani.
Mr. Chairman, sir, the the agriculture show is very important in the dissemination of agriculture technologies and programs for the public to know, to understand, which will create employment for the public, food security, create elevation of poverty. That's why I suggest that we need to have increase this allocation so that the agriculture ministry can provide agriculture show to other divisions within the Fiji nations, like Western Division, Northern Division, Central and the Southern Division, and also Rotuma. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Honorable Bulutabu? I would like to speak on the motion to support the motion by the Honorable Kurundrani. Given agriculture, so it becomes a platform where the Ministry of Agriculture brings in the different species and the various products they have, seeds, and also on livestock. And most of us in the rural areas, we benefit from buying that very good price during agriculture show, especially the different breeds of livestock that are available. But again, if that could be done continuously and also at a large scale, given that most of the time it's limited stock too, it's brought to the agriculture show, and not everyone gets a chance to buy the products that they put on show. But I agree on that. If this could be done by not only in division, but also to go by province. Province, it will be very easier for us to link up to the Ministry of Agriculture, given that most of the time some of our agriculture stations, they don't have the equipments, and we end up at the main office in the divisional level. And at divisional level, we don't have, sometimes we have limited resources. For example, a tractor in Lambasa office, it's only about 3 tractors, which caters about for rice farmers and also cassava farmers. So when requests coming in from cassava farmers, it's all in the waiting list, given they are used up for rice farming during the season. But it's good, cheap price at $28 an hour, given if we use private tractor operators for 1 acre, that's about 1 or 2 change. It's about $300 or $400 for 1 acre. $115 for hanger, then plowing it's another $70, then $80 is for the dari, to make the dari. Those are all the costs. That's why those subsidy provided by Ministry of Agriculture is good, but $28 per hour, but it's not available all the time. If this kind of help could be there, and through agriculture, so people can also be aware of the things that is available and the policies and programs on how we can also use their land and also become active participants in agriculture.
Honorable Minister.
Chair, when you suggest or put a motion to raise a figure, I thought they will say what that additional amount of money that they're asking for would be needed for that particular agriculture show. Now let me just give you an example. The agriculture show, our existing staffs are there who are already on payroll. Our transport is being utilized. There's a little bit of fuel, additional fuel is required. We move in all our livestock and crop and seedlings and all those there. What is it that they're talking about that you need more than $100,000? Now, in fact, the only good thing I've heard from them is, which we are planning at the moment, is to decentralize, have smaller shows in the Western Division, Central Division, the Northern Division, and then probably have the larger one as we are doing now in the Central Division, or probably have the larger one this year, probably in the Western Division or Northern Division. So I really did not get the rationale why they're saying that we need more than $100,000. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Tigadondua.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just want to contribute to the motion before the committee on the agriculture show. The agriculture show, I believe, is an important event because it gives farmers the opportunity to showcase their stuff. I remember because some years back, I actually won a prize for having the best native breed Ndalo bundle. So it's the Gilos people call that. But I'm baffled also by the fact that there is an agriculture show, but on crops and other, on cattle and all that, livestock. But there's been a reduction in the crop extension activity by the same budget. So I'm a little bit confused here. So just maybe some clarification later on by the minister would be good. Thank you.
Thank you. Honourable Minister, you have the floor.
Yeah, I mean, if he, when it comes to that particular item, line item, I'm happy to explain. But I just want to respond to Honourable Bulitabo, who mentioned about the tractor availability. There's no such issue now. From last year, November, we have decided to outsource. So when they say a request for tractor utilization, when we don't have if our tractor is booked, then we have outsourced it. We have, we hire from the private sector and send the tractor over within 14 days. That's the policy. So that's a non-issue, and it has nothing also to do with this particular allocation.
Thank you. Program 2, Activity 1. Activity 2. Activity 2. Honourable Kurandrani, you have the floor to move your motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that Head 30, Program 2, Activity 2, Seg 8, especially for the high-value crops that are in Segment 8, like the Ndalo, the Angona, vanilla, cocoa, ginger. I move that all these high-value, low-volume crops to be increased, the budget to be increased by 300,000 for all of these high-value crops, individual. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second motion, Mr. Chair.
You have the floor.
Mr. Chair, these high-value crops, I think is one of the important area which the ministry need to focus on to help resolve our economy. We understand that Angona, the Ndalo, ginger, cocoa, even the vanilla are the most important crops that is pushing the GDP for agriculture. And I'm thinking, I agree that we need to put more focus on this for these crops that will help improve our economy at this time of crisis. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Honourable Tigdodo, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I would like to speak in support of the motion. Chair, there's various allocations, 8, 9, and 10 under the same program. Speaks of these various assistance to farmers. Now, in the previous budgets, we've been raising concerns about how these assistance to farmers were shared fairly amongst the farmers when they're given out. Now, in particular, I raised still the concerns raised in the House a number of times by Nambitu farmers of Singatoka. We visited those in June, and the same complaints still came up, particularly the unfairness in which the allocation of this assistance is given to farmers. So we met about 90-odd farmers on the day. Now, these assistants are great for farmers, but when farmers get left out, it becomes an issue. So when determinations are made about who gets to be assisted, we would like to implore on the minister and his staff, of those who will determine who gets what, that everyone is considered fairly and not according to some preferences of the minister's choice. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, this is the first time. This is the first time I'm hearing from the honourable member about issues with assistance given to the farmers in the Nambitu area that he's referring to. What he raised last time was This is my time now. What he raised last time was the issue about fertilizer, and I said to them that we are promoting organic fertilizer. You know, the couple of reasons. One is the environment I mentioned. Number two, the massive cost that we're incurring by importing inorganic chemical fertilizer. And the third is the high unit cost at the farm level. And unfortunately, Honourable Member probably doesn't understand those issues. No. So that's the only issue he raised in Parliament last time. Now, is this the first time he's raising this? He should bring it to me that on this particular day and date, there was something that was distributed to the farmers, and some farmers were discriminated and some farmers were favored. No, I haven't got that from him till now. Now, what are we distributing there? This is we're dealing with budget allocation, not complaints. If you have a complaint, you bring it to us and we'll deal with them.
Honourable Multaw.
Yeah, thank you, Honourable Chair. I'll speak in support of the motion. Given the various different activities in that sec that the Honourable Kurundrani has moved for increase by 300,000. On Ngona, Dalo, and Jinja, probably something that the Honourable Minister to improve is on the availability of CASA for farmers who want to, especially when they come to the Ministry of Agriculture or Yangona plants, Bia, in India, and also the Dalo, Suluwai. I think these are some of the issues too that people are running around. So when you come to the agriculture office, they link up with private individual farmers so they can call each other and buy as a customer and basis. But just to improve that on how those industries can be improved through those allocations, that the availability of things that those who are in that particular industry can develop, and also the securing the plantations, given there is also issues of stealing in those areas. Grog, especially, the prices are up, and not only that, limited to that, but also the issue of middlemen, coming to the issue of middlemen and them not coming directly to the market. And that links up with AMA, arriving on time, and also the prices. It's also a contributing factor for those farmers in those particular sector. But the first things first is the availability of land in those areas, and people going into planting, and things that should be available to them first, like CASA, that needs to be in these extension offices, and also the other fertilizers or organic materials that we have, so can support them, so they have the production at the end when it's harvest time, or also when they are looking into the plantation.
Honourable Kurundrani, you have the floor for your next motion.
Motion dah betul ya?
Program 2, Activity 2, Seg 8, High Value, Low Value Crops.
Yeah, that's the motion that I've already spoke on, Mr. Chair.
Twice. Honourable Bulanoda, you have the floor.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. My motion is on Program 2, Activity 2, Seg 8, or particular item on farm access roads, to increase by $400,000. Thank you, sir.
Is there a seconder?
Second.
Honourable Bulanoda, you've got the floor.
Thank you, Honourable Chair, sir. This is very important, particularly to help our farmers who are already there. Most of them are already producing, they also contributing to the exports that we have in Dal, Yangon, and other crops as well. We need to boost it to provide access for them, particularly some of these were earmarked for access for about 2 years ago, and they haven't been done. It is important that we provide proper access for them. They're still carrying it on their backs now, or horses' back. So very soon they're going to break their back or the horses' back as well. So we need trucks to go right down to their farm areas. So we need the access down to there. 2 examples, particularly from the Solo to Nriti areas. That's where we need. Also in Wainunu, in Nasandro, in the Kortiki. That's where Honorable Child comes from. Thank you, sir. In Nasandro, in Tauken.
Honorable Dr. Philip Tissoao, you have the floor.
So, thank you, Honorable Chair. In support of that motion, farm access roads, 800,000. That's a really small figure compared to what was given to for cane access roads. So, in terms of what we are producing, and you look at all those crops and where it is located, the need is more. There's in terms of diversification away from sugar to these other crops. So we have the 800,000 in sugar from 2016 to 2020 for cane access roads. Total has been 16 million. 16 million per annum, 3 million, 7.2 million, 6.3 over those years. So I believe that needs to be looked at seriously. Cane access roads, the need to develop farms, and of course link them to markets, not only locally, but internationally.
Yeah. Honorable Buraleo, we have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to speak in support of the motion. We reckon that the amount is very less due to the sense that people have changed their mindset once the bitumen has been banned. They have shifted in utilizing land in planting farming. So there is a demand of excess road in order to get the produce to the market. That's why if we distribute the amount to the 4 division, in the north, there are 3 provinces. We have to distribute the 66,000 that will cater only for 1 farm access road. That's why we support the motion to increase the amount. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Honorable Bulnoda, you can move your second motion.
Thank you, Chair. My second motion is on activity 2, sec 9, on farm mechanization, $500,000 to be increased to 1 million, increased by 500,000. Because we need to uplift.
Is there a seconder?
Oh, sorry.
Is there a seconder? Don't put your hand up. Say so.
I second the motion.
Right. You have the floor, Honorable Bulnoda.
Thank you, Chair. It is important that we quickly introduce mechanization to this. Even though you've already been there for 500,000, I need to double it. Because you need to double production for mechanization or tractors, whatever that you have here in the central division. You can take it up there so that you can help them dig their drains, plow their land quickly. So it's important to give mechanization to these farmers to produce more and contribute to our export in various kinds of commodities that we have in agriculture. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Honorable Minister, I'll give you the floor you can address both motions.
Chair, Honorable PM wanted to make a contribution and then I'll come in.
Honorable
Sorry.
Minister.
Yes, Chair. I've been in all the places I've been to. They always request for farm roads, and we can understand that. But he's got limited funds. We will try and fix up all the farm roads that we can in the next financial year. Unfortunately, we don't have enough to fix up all the farm roads that people want to have fixed. That's people like Honorable Pio is lucky. His farm road was fixed when he was the Minister for Infrastructure. That's all right. But some people are unfortunate that they don't have money to have the farm roads fixed. Vinaka, sir.
Honorable Minister, you have the floor.
Yeah.
You have the floor.
Chair, as alluded to by Honorable Prime Minister, that amount of $800,000, we are looking at doing about 133 kilometers of farm road. How we will do it? We will do it by our own machinery. So there is enormous amount of requests, and I understand the issue is not about resources, the issue is about time. So we may not be certainly able to meet all the requests within the upcoming financial year, but I want to say that there is a commitment from us to do farm roads using our machinery and gravel from that particular area. We have got consent from the Mathangali, most of the places. So we will be announcing the first set of farm roads that we will be doing once in 2 weeks' time, in which places. And also we will give an update to this House as well as public on the farm roads that we have done over the last 3 months. And you'll be surprised to see how much or how many kilometers of farm road we have done in the Western Division, in the Northern Division, in the Central Division, using our own machine, smartly and more efficiently. And so with this allocation, if you're thinking that, $40,000 per kilometer and that's what you will be able to do it, no, we will be doing about 133 kilometers of farm road with $800,000. That's a lot of farm road. Now, mechanization, someone said that, they want to increase the allocation. Now, look, what are we going to do with the allocation that we have got for individual crop? It is for farm roads, it is for farm mechanization, it is for planting material that, Honorable Bulitawa was saying. That's the kind of support we're giving. And also you need to remember that these are not new crops that we're establishing. These crops have been there. Every year, there have been allocation for these particular crops. So this allocation is there to provide them with planting material, to provide them with mechanization support that Bulitawa alluded to, $28 an hour for land clearing, $28 an hour for land preparation. Now, Honorable Bulitawa complained that planting materials are not there. There are 3 types of planting material: dry seeds, cutting or suckers, and seedlings. For seedlings, they will have to order in advance. 2 months, 3 months in advance. For cutting suckers and cuttings, for example, cassava cutting, these are green material. We don't keep it. We can't keep it. It takes time. You need to tell us 2 weeks in advance or so, and we will provide that. We have got this scheme now where we provide the farmers free planting material, which they will be required to return it to us in 3 years' time. That is there. And you tell me if anyone was turned around over the last 6 months. Not a single farmer has been turned around saying that we don't have planting material. We must have said, come back in 2 weeks' time. Honorable Ginubaravi is there who contacted us, and she was provided with planting material. So you can't point out to me that someone who was turned around. Dry seeds, yes, there is limited amount. Tell us, the farmers will have to tell us what dry seed they need, and we will organize it. We don't carry large stocks, but we procure it and pass it to the farmers. So this allocation of farm mechanization you see here, it is in over and above the allocation for individual crops that we have. For example, for those vegetable farmers, you don't have that in the list there. So that is what this farm mechanization will pick up from for those vegetable farmers, the cabbage, etc., and Valley Road. Thank you.
All right, Program 2, Activity 3. Program 2 activity. Honorable Ngavoka.
Chair, segment 8, there's an allocation there for agricultural research services, root crops, $350,000. Can I just get from the minister, Honorable Minister, if this includes the variety of cassava, which he told us in his ministerial statements, has a huge market for exporting to Australia? What is the status of that? Thank you.
Honorable Chairman, Mr. Chairman, Honorable Gavoka points out to the yellow cassava, the Benga yellow cassava that we are expanding. There's a massive demand in Australia. The Indonesians prefer the yellow cassava because when we ship it frozen, when you defroze and cook it, it's nice firm. So these are the kind of allocations that we have there, which assist in research stations, expand the planting material cuttings, or also seed purification. Seed purification is on number one on our agenda at research station, because over time, seeds do get mixed up. So every now and then, we need to provide new seed for the farmers, so that if let's say for rice, if you provide them with sitara or ball grain seed, over time the ball grain seed gets mixed up with the other varieties. So seed purification is also happening at the research station. Planting material, we now are dedicating research stations for particular crop or crops, so that they then will provide a multiplication of seeds for provision to farmers for planting material.
Thank you. Program 3 Activity 1? No. Program 3 Activity 2? No. Program 3 Activity 3? No. Yes. Honorable Tigundua, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Chair, under Seg 8, there's an allocation in the budget for goat breeding, sheep breeding, beef breeding, poultry, and others. There were some issues years ago with regards to bovine brucellosis, as well as the development of genetic F1 sheep crossbreed, etc. Could we just get some clarification from the Minister where that is now? Thanks.
Okay. Chair,
you have the floor.
Two issues he has raised about TB and brucellosis and the new genetic material which started by Honorable Yasero Ratu. Now on the brucellosis and TB, brucellosis, we're very fortunate that which is pretty much under control. The recent tests have shown brucellosis is well under control, but we don't want to put our guards down and say that there's no brucellosis in Fiji. TB is an issue. We are continuing our testing and culling and the farms, and then labeling these farms as TB free. And this will be ongoing. It'll take about 20 years or so. In Australia, it took them 40 years to declare Australia free from TB. Now, the second issue that Honorable Tukundu raised was about providing them with farms with this new breed that we have, Brown Swiss for dairy and Senapol for beef cattle. We are now ready to provide this new genetic material to the farms. But so this was a very expensive program. Now, we just don't want to send it out to the farms who are not clean. So we have decided that there will be about 10 breeder bull each, Senapol and Brown Swiss, that will be given out to large commercial farms, and that's it. We'll give it to them. Of course, we'll sell it at a very low rate, and that's it. They won't come back to us because we don't want that, in case it gets contaminated, to come back to us. Then in addition to that, we are looking at, which is really as much more safer and efficient, is AI, artificial insemination, and embryo transfer now within. So four things are happening. One is that we are now selecting farms where we will give these breeders, the bulls, for Brown Swiss and Senapol. Number two is we want to get experts to do AI and embryo transfer here. And fourth is multiplication. multiplication within our research station to increase the number of bulls, breeder bulls that we will give out. So that we are now establishing Yangara for that and Dombulevu. Thank you.
Thank you. Program 6, Activity 1. No. Honorable members, we will now move on to the motions. The first motion by the Honorable Mitialim Bulanoda, that Head 30 be increased by $500,000 in Program 2, Activity 2, Seg 9, in respect of farm mechanization. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say nay. Nay. The nays have it. The second motion by the Honorable Bulanoda, that Head 30 be increased by $400,000 in Program 2, Activity 2, Seg 8, with respect to Farm Access Road. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say nay. Nay. The nays have it. The third motion by the Honorable Kurandrani, that Head 30 be increased by $400,000 in Program 1, Activity 4, Seg 7, with respect to Agriculture Show. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say nay. Nay. The nays have it. The next motion by the Honorable Kurandrani, that Head 30 be increased by $385,949 in Program 1, Activity 1, Seg 6, with respect to Tutu Training Center. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say nay. Nay. Ayes, nays have it. The Honorable Kurandrani's next motion is that Head 30 be increased by $334,730 in Program 1, Activity 1, Seg 6, with respect to Navuso Agricultural Technical Institute. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say nay. Nay. The nays have it. The next motion by the Honorable Kurandrani, that Head 30 be increased by $300,000 in Program 2, Activity 2, Seg 8, with respect to high-value, low-volume crops, Yangona, vanilla, cocoa, ginger, jalo. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say nay. Nay. Nays have it. Honorable members, Parliament will now vote on Head 30. The question is that the amount of Head number 30, Ministry of Agriculture, be approved. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say nay. Nay. The head is agreed to. Honorable members, time moves on. We will now suspend proceedings. For lunch, honorable members, Parliament will resume in an hour's time. We adjourn for lunch. Naka.